Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome to Friday 15 with Master B2B. I'm Mike right here. My name is Brian Beck. I'm here with Andy Hoare. We are rocking out again. February 21st, here with Master B2B. My name is Brian Beck. Andy Hoare, my partner with Master B2B Thought Leadership Community and intergalactic events and all kinds of fun stuff. Andy, welcome to Friday 15.
Yeah, and don't forget about cool jazz countdown music too. What was that?
I don't know, man. They changed it up on us. Our production team is gone crazy. Yep. So I guess they're trying to keep us on our toes. Anyhow, welcome, folks, to Friday 15. We've got an interesting topic we're talking about today. But first, Andy, I was in Dallas this week for one of our roundtables. We had a group of about 20 executives from across the Dallas area, some fantastic folks that represent all different kinds of companies, everybody from McKesson, Sunbelt Rentals, SHI International was there. We had just a really great group of people. SRS Distribution was there, right? The company that was bought by Home Depot recently. There's some interesting discussions around that. So, and we talked all about how to leverage data and insights in creating differentiated and world-class customer experiences using on digital. Great discussion, Andy. People did not want to leave. Literally, we had a 2-hour discussion and then dinner and cocktails. And the Tower Club in Dallas, which is at the top of this building, they had to kick us out, man. It was great. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's shades of what happened in Atlanta. I mean, it's just when people get into these conversations, I think they realize they're around like-minded people who are struggling with the same problems, and everybody wants to keep talking. So, yeah, that's a good thing.
Exactly. All right, well, let's get over to our breaking news. So, Andy, I don't know if you saw this, but MDM reported just this week that new research, distributors are likely to shift sourcing domestically within 3 years. They did a study, a Baird or Bard, or however you say that, MDM Industrial Distribution Survey in Q4 2024, who indicated they were likely to shift sourcing, many citing tariffs as a key factor. Not surprising here, Andy, right? But what struck me about this research was it was specifically about distributors. We've heard a lot about manufacturers with raw materials looking to shift supply chain, towards the United States, domestic. What are your thoughts? Any reactions?
Yeah, this has been long in coming. It started during the pandemic when people realized that the supply chains, in particular in China, were unreliable. And so companies started thinking about where to shift stuff. I mean, Nike moved a lot of stuff out of China and to places like Vietnam and other places. But yeah, I don't know. The lure of China is strong, though, because they got this ecosystem of technology talent. It's not as simple as, oh, we can find a place to build a plant. Well, do you have engineers in the plant? Do you have support staff in the plant? This is what's going to be the determining factor, but no question about this. There's a lot more flexibility around this now, and people are interested in diversifying that.
Well, for companies that have a U.S. manufacturing base, the manufacturers, I mean, gosh, you got distributors now who are thinking about how quickly can I get product? Can I get product? The cost of that product. And so I just thought it was interesting that distribution is also thinking this way now too. So we'll keep our eyes on that. So our topic this week is digital transformation in B2B a project with a start and end date, right? Or is it a program ongoing with sort of no specific end date? And we posted this up, got a lot of votes on LinkedIn and other places, got some interesting feedback and comments. And certainly, folks, if you're on live with us here on LinkedIn Live, chime in and ask us questions or comment on things. Love your opinion. But Andy, this is a big topic, and it's one that it's the knee-jerk reaction, I think, is to say, heck, it's a program. But when you think about digital transformation as a program, how do you define, or sorry, a program? How do you define a sort of an ROI around it? How do you set execution, measurable execution milestones, and determine how you get from point A to point B if it's a program versus a project? So this is an interesting debate, and maybe frame it up a little bit more for us, Andy.
Yeah, so everybody wants to say it's a program, and in theory, that's the right answer. But in reality, they manage it like it's a project. And so you can see on the image here, just something we created where, with a project, there's a beginning and an end date, and there are milestones along the way. Whereas a program, you go through phases, but then it all comes back full circle. And, again, in
Mhm.
theory, everybody wants to say it's a program, and the very best companies do manage to a program. But what I've found is most companies talk program and manage project, which creates
Yep.
a lot of issues. But we did actually put this out to the community, and the response was overwhelming. To our point, everybody believes it's a program. So when we said, "Is digital transformation in B2B a project or a program?" 96% said
Ah,
program.
right.
Maybe the
Right.
4% were being honest about how they actually manage it as a project. But
Yeah. Yep.
yeah, so that was what we heard back. So we thought, okay, everybody agrees it's a program, but that doesn't say anything about how it gets managed. And what we do know from a lot of research is that 70 to 90% of these transformations that take place in companies actually fail.
Hmm.
McKinsey said 70% of large scale transformation efforts fail. Bain and Company, 88% of business transformations do not achieve their original ambitions. And then maybe head on here, Deloitte, I did a study that said 70% of digital transformation projects fail. That's
Yep.
literally digital transformation projects
You broke
fail.
up a little
So
bit there, Andy, but 70% of digital transformation projects fail, according to Deloitte. And what's fascinating about this is, are you back, Andy? We lost you for a
yes,
second there.
I'm here.
So what's interesting about this, Andy, is that I just read your last statistic while you were offline. What's interesting about this is, in some ways, this might be a result of the thinking about this. In other words, if you're thinking about it as a program, how do you measure success? Okay, so these failed. How do we know they failed? Right? I mean, okay, that's fine. 70% digital project transformation fails, whatever. Deloitte, fine. But how do you know that? I mean, what are you measuring against? Is this sort of too big, or is it that you're trying to measure against, or is it something that And so we dove a little further, Andy. You went a little deeper into this, and you're looking for reasons for failure. You want to take us through that?
Yeah, there are four, and you mentioned the big one, which is the lack of clear goals, and that's translation, not measurable outcomes. I mean, again, if you don't measure it, you don't know what you're measuring toward. So you really should start with what are the KPIs here. So if you don't have clear goals, which is based on measurable outcomes, you're definitely not going to be very successful. Number two is, and we hear this all the time, do we not? That people
Mm-hmm.
think about this digital transformation in terms of accomplishments, milestones, et cetera, and they sort of brush off or pay lip service to the idea that there are a significant number of change management strategies that are going to have to be implemented here. In fact, most of these things probably fail because the humans don't ever get on board with it. And so there's resistance, there's misalignment. These two things have to be done in parallel. In fact, I remember way back in the day, it's kind of funny, Cisco, remember Cisco,
Yeah,
CISCO,
yeah, yeah, sure. Yep.
they were famous for being an acquisition machine.
Yep.
And so they would acquire company after company after company. And somebody talked to them once in detail about how they did that. And they said the most important thing they do is every time, for every person they assign internally to operate or to operationalize the acquisition, they assign a human resources or change management person with it. So they
Right.
see them as equally important, because you can't just buy a company and say, hey, here's stock options, keep doing what you're doing. No, the assimilation process requires change management. Number three,
Yep. Well, before you move
um,
off that topic, Andy, a good
yeah,
example. I was talking yesterday with a senior level executive at a very large building products company, and somebody as well. And this was the the crux of the discussion. How do I introduce e-commerce in a world where there's so much sort of fear and silos and fear across the organization? So, it's almost this is a pervasive issue, and in particular, I think this is true with manufacturers. But go ahead. I just wanted to point out that example.
yeah. And so the last two were about, and this is one that people don't really talk about much, but it's a fair point, which is about overloading top talent. So suddenly you're working 70 hours a week, and then they say, great, we're now going to do this transformation. and you're in charge of it. It's like, well, okay, so what am I not going to continue doing going forward? What's going to get displaced? So like, oh, nothing. Just add this to your list of things. So this is one of those classic scenarios where the successful achieving people basically
Right.
get punished for their good deeds, and they end up having even more to do, which leads to burnout
Hmm.
and causes people to leave. So that's not good either. People don't think about digital transformation as a thing that has its own life. They just think it as an adjunct to what you're doing right now. And the last one is poor technology adoption. How many times have we seen this? How many Friday 15s have we talked about where people have made the wrong decision about e-commerce, search, CMS, even
Right.
ERP?
For PIM.
Or they've
Yep.
got all these different systems they're trying to bring together on digital that weren't designed for digital, like an ERP
Mhm.
that doesn't have real-time reporting capabilities. It's not real time at all. It's showing inventory from batches done a night before or a couple of days ago.
Right.
That's not going to work in digital. So
Right.
anyway, those are the four main reasons. We could go on for days about other reasons, but those are the four biggies.
Yeah, and execution really matters, though, Andy. Right, the potential for value loss. This is some data from McKinsey. The potential for value lost in a transformation begins as early as day one, and the largest share of its value is lost during implementation. And by the way, I'm going to continue harping on this, Andy. All this data, everything we're talking about here, feels more like a project than a program, right? But go ahead. What's your take on this data from McKinsey? What is it saying?
Yeah. Yeah. So this is fascinating because the value loss that they describe here takes place at all phases, right? The targeting phase, which is the beginning, the planning phase, which is kind of early but still transitioning. Implementation is the big chunk, and then post implementation. They said the vast majority of the value loss is during the implementation
Yeah,
phase.
yeah,
And I suspect that is because companies have not done a great job of the target and the planning phase,
right.
or they get distracted because other duties come into play. So if you're compensated based on, say, you're a marketing executive, you're compensated based on lead scoring, and then on the side, you're supposed to be doing this digital transformation thing.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
at the end of the day, you're going to get paid based on the former, not the latter. Which one do you
Yeah,
think is
right.
going to get prioritized, right?
Right. Right. Yep. Absolutely. Yeah, no, and also I think this also speaks to the fact that during implementation, I've lived this myself. Stuff comes up that you don't expect. You get side, hit in the side of the head by stuff. Wait, where'd that come from? As you're digging into, for example, systems. But again, this all still feels like a project to me, Andy. It doesn't feel like a program, right? I mean, all the
Well,
data we're looking at here. Hmm.
and further to that point, it's really lays bare how many companies are actually built for execution.
Right.
And
Right.
so we're wondering, okay, well, what do the experts, quote unquote, say about how to overcome this? What's the best way to be successful? And funny enough,
Mm.
McKinsey found in one of their studies that, believe it or not, just completing tasks, the quantity of the tasks you complete has a pretty high correlation with how successful you're going to be.
Hmm.
Just completing the stuff. But
Interesting.
if you think about it, if you do a pretty good job of planning it all out, yes, you save for things that are going to blindside you, et cetera. I think what happens is these things tend to lose their momentum.
Hmm.
Everybody gets excited about digital transformation. Oh, we're going to change this, we're going to change that. But then when the hard work begins, to the last slide about implementation, this is the nitty gritty. This is where you got 5 action items, you got to get them done today. That's where people go, maybe I have time for 2. And
Right.
I think what McKinsey found was when companies did all 5 that they set out to do, it correlated highly with success. I mean, they said that basically, if you do 24 actions, there's a much higher success rate than if you do fewer than the 24 actions. So, and they
Hmm.
go all the way down to like 1 to 4 actions, all the way up to 25. But there is a high correlation between the number of things you complete, tasks that you
Interesting.
actually finish, and
Hmm.
success of these projects. So I think the lesson learned here is do the planning, but do the work.
Yeah, to me, getting back to our core question today, which is process versus project. To me, Andy, it's I believe that digital transformation, and it's a sort of a buzzword, it's been used now for years. Some people hate it, some love it, but I think it's sort of a state of mind. I mean, I have the last chapter of my book. I talk about being digital, right? I think that's really what it is, and it's not. I do believe it is a process, but more than a process. It's a cultural shift. It's a state of mind. Within that, I think you have projects, and I think those projects, then a lot of the data we've been talking about, implementation phase, et cetera. Those projects might be implementation of an e-commerce platform or introduction of a personalization program or cross-channel, sales support program, sales enablement, what have you. Those programs are more easily defined and they can be measured, and the actions can be tied to, measurable outcomes. And so I think, to me, the answer to the question, I agree with our community in the sense that it is a program composed of a variety of projects. So I think it's kind of both, if you follow me on that. So
yeah, but
that's
to
my
your point,
Yeah.
but to your point, it's got to be fundamentally a program. Maybe
Yeah.
the order there matters, because yes,
Right.
you're going to define the program by a series of projects. But if you think about it as a project that's beginning to end and it's over, then you allocate your money that way, you allocate your people that way, you allocate your internal capital that way, you allocate the prioritization of your CEO's time that way, versus saying, hey, it's a continuous ongoing thing. It reminds me of that Simon Sinek
Mm.
book about the continuous game. And if you play a game thinking that there's 4 quarters and it's going to end after the 4th quarter, you're going to play differently than if you think, wait a minute, there isn't really an end of the game. There isn't a 4th quarter. There's a 5th and a 6th and the 7th and an 8th. If you think about it that way, you think differently. And I think too many companies think about it, especially since, we think about publicly traded companies that operate on a quarterly basis.
Sure.
They're like, oh, we're doing the digital transformation project this quarter. It's like, no, you're not.
Right. No, it's fascinating. I think, and we can continue to debate this. And we even asked this question at the roundtable the other day. Who owns digital, right? I mean, who is so okay? So it's a program. Well, who owns it? Who owns the program? Who ensures that we talked about this on Friday 15s in the past, Andy. I agree with you to an extent, but then you got to think about, okay, if it's a program, who's managing it? And I think the conclusion we came to with a lot of these is it's the CEO, right? I mean, ultimately.
Right. Because I said years ago that digital transformation is really business transformation.
Right.
Because you can't just say, oh, we're doing digital now. And if it changes how the sales reps operate, how we market, where we spend our money in technology, then it's a business transformation. And if you put it in those terms, who owns the business transformation of the company?
Right. The CEO and the board.
Exactly.
Ultimately. Yeah, I mean, and this goes back to the discussion I was having yesterday with that executive. I mean, it's, you can't set you can't put a senior manager or director in charge of business transformation. It just doesn't work. These driving some of the change and mindset shifts that's required for a program of digital transformation can't be, at a level which doesn't have sufficient influence in the organization. You just can't do it. It just won't work. So anyway, this is such a great topic. I think we can keep talking about it, Andy, but we're at Friday 20 and we got to get to some of our announcements here. So, folks, want to remind you that we just published some research about the keys to unlocking growth in the long tail. What is that? Well, it's the 80% of products that sit there and do only 20% of your revenue. And it's the 80% of your customers that do only 20% of your revenue. What if you could lift that, right? What if you could lift that by 10 or 20%? That's what this report talks about. And we encourage you to go to our website, masterb2b.com, 5 keys to unlocking long tail. You'll see it on our website there under resources, and download that. It's free. We did that in partnership with VTEX and VML. And, it's a really great piece. So I encourage you guys to take a look at that. We also have our forum, which is growing every day. We're seeing questions and announcements and job postings, all kinds of stuff here. This is a practitioner-only section of our website. It's a sort of a private LinkedIn online community. No solution providers or vendors. It's all practitioners, peer-to-peer conversations and networking. Go to Master B2B, click on forum to apply to join. Andy, we've been doing roundtables this winter and spring coming up. We got a bunch more. Cleveland, Denver, Minneapolis, Charlotte, Cincinnati, LA, New York City, and St. Louis. Go to our website, masterb2b.com, and future events to find out more. And want to remind everyone, we have our summit coming up, Andy. This is 3 weeks away at the University of Chicago, March 12th. We have, I think, about 6 seats left at this point for practitioners. We've got close to 100 people registered. It is a great, great group, full day event. And if you sign up now, practitioners, let us know. We can still fit you in. And I think we are just about sold out on sponsorships. But if anybody else on the sponsor side, I think we may have one more slot left. So let us know on that. And then finally, want to remind everyone that our podcast, this is Friday 15, is available as a podcast on Spotify, Google, Apple, on YouTube, and on our own website. And you can listen to this while you're doing whatever you do, walking your dog or taking a shower. Well, maybe not then. But anyhow, enjoy it on your leisure. Andy, any final words before we wrap our Friday? Oh, gosh, 21, 22.
Yeah, I had hoped we might do this one in 15 minutes, but no, we didn't.
No, of course not. Nope, we just can't. So, okay, so no final words. What do you know? This is a first. Okay, everybody. Well, thanks for joining, and we'll see you next week on our next Friday 15, folks. Have a great week.